social media since its very first inception have been these fairly large but insular bubbles. If you have an account and following on MySpace, that was different from Facebook. That was different from YouTube. That was different from Tumblr. Obviously, with the exception of services owned by the same company that build in that communication. Things like Facebook, Instagram, and Threads being obvious examples. Outside of that, though, outside of being able to, log into another service with a different account, it was completely separated. But we are starting to see a very, very small shift in the sands, whether that be Blue Sky with its AT protocol, or my personal interest, the Fediverse, comprised of platforms like Mastodon, Pleroma, PeerTube, and a bunch of others that all intercommunicate, and you can just interact with these other platforms with the one account. Someone on PeerTube can follow your Mastodon account, no issue whatsoever. And now, the Fediverse actually has a chance to go somewhat mainstream. Now, there was a little bit of a bump when Elon Musk took over Twitter. Obviously, people were like, oh my god, the rich man that makes the cars, he's gonna destroy the world! Didn't happen, he just, runs the platform into the ground, and it's probably gonna go bankrupt because he has $100 million of interest to pay every single month. But there was a bit of a bump in users. And last year, Tumblr did discuss adding in ActivityPub support. Now, Tumblr is nowhere near as big as it was before. And whilst they've not officially dropped the project, it's very much on the back burner, and it's probably not gonna get done. But another platform actually went through with it and actually deployed something. That platform being Threads. Now, Threads is nowhere near as big as Instagram wished it was going to be. It was massive at the start because every Instagram user just had a Threads account, and then it went, woo! So, it's not as big as it could be, but it's a hell of a lot bigger than Mastodon is. And right now, there is a very limited test going on. This right here is Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, and this is his Threads account connected over ActivityPub. Now, one thing to note is if you're not logged in, it will redirect you over to the Threads website, so make sure you actually have an account on the instance you are trying to check. Now, Adam is not the only account doing this. There's also Jessel, who is an engineer working presumably on this functionality. He is an engineer at Threads, so if he's here, he's probably just using his account as a test suite. Now, whilst you can obviously post comments on these, you can like them, you can repost, all that stuff, currently it is very much in one direction. So anything you do on the Mastodon, Pleroma, any Fediverse platform you're using to interact with this account is not going to be sent over to the Thread side. That is not the end goal here. That's just the way it currently works because, it's very, very early on. So on posts like this one here, you might notice a second Adam Mosseri. This is his actual Fediverse account that he uses to interact with people on the platform because he can't do it from the Thread side just yet. Right now, it's a very annoying way to make use of the platform, but as I said, this is not the end goal. This is the very, very first step. Now, he has commented on the whole project quite extensively, which you can't actually see from the Fediverse side because they get cut off because the posts are too old. If you browse more on the original profile, that obviously takes you over to his Threads account. This right here is the thread in question. Fediverse update thread. For those of you who don't know, Threads is being built on the ActivityPub protocol, which means that it'll be interoperable with other apps, servers like Mastodon over time. This week we took a small but important step by allowing people in the Fediverse who don't use Threads or even have a Mastodon account to follow my Threads account as well as a few others. Content is starting to flow from Threads to the Fediverse. We are working on making this option available to all public accounts on Threads, not just a handful of testers. We're starting small to make sure we have time to work through all the challenges, as our systems historically have not been designed with this use case in mind. What he is saying is it spaghetti code and they need some time to iron out the problems. But it's a good thing to roll things out, in small groups. Because if you roll it out to everybody at once and you realize that it's horribly, horribly broken, the damage is going to be a lot bigger than 3 test accounts. Initially, when they expand the group to more users, it's supposed to be opt-in, not opt-out. There is some discussion about changing that, but opt-in would be, by default, your Threads account is not being shared with the Fediverse. I don't like it being like this. Many cases, I do like opt-in situations, but most people on Threads have no idea what the Fediverse is. So making it so they have to opt into this thing they don't understand means that most people are just not going to do so. I want to be able to follow, my parents that just happen to use Instagram, that happen to use Threads from my Fediverse account. Having to ask them to go and enable this feature they don't understand what it does is going to mean a lot of people just never do it. The only people that would actually enable Threads to Fediverse content posting are the people that likely already have a Fediverse account anyway. We also plan to make it so replies from people in the Fediverse can show up for people posting from Threads to the Fediverse. It's a bad experience now that I have to leave the Threads app to see replies I'm getting from the broader community, so basically two-way posting. We also plan to build support for Threads users to follow Fediverse accounts, so that content can flow from the Fediverse back into Threads. There's a fair amount to figure out with regards to privacy and integrity. I am sure you care a lot about privacy and integrity, a company owned by Meta, but we're actively working through those issues. Now, this is the super cool part. Eventually, it should also be possible to enable creators to leave Threads and take their followers with them to another app/server. I believe that it's important that creators own their relationship with their audience. So if you build up an audience on Threads and you just don't like Threads anymore, you can take that entire audience and just set up an account on Mastodon. I would imagine he probably wants to do in the other direction as well, but account migration is massive. If you can just move around freely as you want to, and this becomes an actual part of the Fediverse, that is absolutely massive. I expect all of this to take the better part of a year and to roll out in stages. That's a lot longer than I or anybody on the team wants, but it's the reality given all the other work we need to balance. I don't want them to rush. I don't care how long this takes. If this takes 6 months, if this takes a year, take as long as it needs to take. Get it done right, and get it done right the first time. There is going to be bugs that need to be ironed out once it goes live for everybody, but the core fundamentals should be rock solid before the general public can touch it. Now, as you may have been able to guess, I am quite excited for this change, and I've been wishing for something like this to happen for so long. When I heard about Tumblr doing this, I was like, you know what? Tumblr's kind of dead, but it's something. Now that Threads is doing it, this is absolutely massive. Whilst many others do feel the same, there are a lot of others, especially those who are instance admins, who don't agree. There is a lot of controversy about Threads doing this. And there is this list that was put together. Oh, they completely redid the CSS. This was just like a really badly organized list yesterday. There is a list here of which servers decide to and to not block Threads. Now, thankfully, there is a lot of instances that are not doing this. Sadly, there is a lot of instances that are doing it. Now, there is this graph put out by Fedipact Online, which is the group that's actually organizing all this stuff. 41% of Fediverse instances have Threads blocked. Now, that sounds a lot better when you put it into the scale of number of servers. But keep in mind, a lot of servers are very, very small. And most of the big instances, with the exception of things like Mass.to and InfoSec Exchange, haven't even considered it. There are ones like this which get down to like 8,000, 9,000 active users, but a lot of these big ones aren't even considering it. It's not until you get down to things like here, I will talk about Fedipact in a moment, and these which they don't consider because they don't even want to acknowledge they exist. If you know what Post is, you probably know why they don't want to acknowledge it exists. So then, Fedipact, the anti-meta Fedipact. This is an open letter and a list of instance admins that agree we are going to block Threads. And there is a lot of servers on this list. along with a lot of servers that aren't on the list that are also blocking as well. That's how you got to 41%. This is a list of users who are just trying to stop any chance of the Fediverse going mainstream. That's just what I'm going to say. I know they have their reasons for it, but that's what they're doing. Now, I'm sure each of these admins have their own different reasoning, but from what I can see, there is 3 main arguments. Firstly, I don't like Zuck. I don't care about the reason. Throw that one out the window. Secondly, data collection. Thirdly, Instagram Threads is so much bigger than the Fediverse that it's going to basically water down the entire experience, and the Fediverse is just going to become Threads. Which sort of leads into a sub-argument a lot of people are making. There is a lot of people they don't like on Threads, whether they, want to call for the death of certain people, whatever categories that you're in or you really care about, people that are just on the internet, on every single social media out there that I guess they think don't exist on Mastodon because they haven't been on any of the instances where they very much exist, and I can tell you they exist. So, data collection. You know that you're posting on a public account, on a public platform. You know that anybody can set up an instance and collect all of your data that you're posting there. I know you don't like Threads, but if you don't want your data to be collected, stop posting things publicly. Secondly, Threads is way bigger than the Fediverse. Absolutely true. This I can see as a concern. But I don't see it as big of a concern as some users are making it out to be, because if you just block the users you're not interested in, and you don't want them following you, like, that power already exists in Mastodon. There is a lot of self-curation abilities that have always been there that you're probably already using if you don't like, Kiwi Farms or any other instance like that, or there's specific users that you don't want to interact with. Just because there is more people that are on Threads doesn't mean that tooling just goes away. It's all still there, and it all still works great. And that applies to the individual users that are, calling for the death of certain people. I don't like the idea of blocking an entire instance over a single user. Now, there are instances out there where I think, hey, yeah, you probably should block them, where the entire instance is about, CP. Yes, those do exist. No, they shouldn't exist. Things like murder videos and all that stuff. These are things that do exist on the Fediverse, and you have the ability to block them. But there are so many people on Threads. There are people that are scientists. There are people that are parents that are just posting about what their kids are doing. There are people that are joining the Nazi party. Just because those people exist doesn't mean that you should block the entire thing. With Threads being so much bigger than the Fediverse, I've seen people calling this embrace, extend, extinguish. You don't need Threads to help extinguish the Fediverse, because the Fediverse is gonna do it itself. You have all of these servers that are trying to block the one chance you get to actually go mainstream, the one chance you get to be able to go and communicate with your family from this open platform and maybe convince them to actually try it out and bring something more open into their lives. You don't need Threads to extinguish this platform, you're gonna do it yourself. So please, any Fediverse admins out there, if you're on the fence about doing this, do not preemptively block it. If you want to block it later down the line, go ahead and do so. But please, I would prefer if you just leave it up to the individual users to decide, I want to curate my content the way that I want to curate it. This is why I'm on my instance. It basically doesn't block anything unless it is very, very illegal. And that is the kind of instance that I want to be on, and I wish more were like this. But let me know your thoughts down below, especially if you're a Fediverse admin, and especially if you are planning to block it. I would love to hear your thoughts. So, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video, and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon Scrubs Libera Pay, linked in the description down below. I am 5 videos into recording after being sick, so if my voice sounds kinda off, that's why. I'm out.
something like this.